Have you ever seen this before? I bet you're sitting there going, well, maybe that's a new scientific term. Or maybe that's a new car part. That's just an acronym for a new car part. Or maybe this is some kind of an acronym for an organization. You'd be wrong on all counts. What is that? It's called stitches per inch. Why is that important? Okay. The higher SPIs mean that there's a higher quality in the stitching. Okay? So, the higher SPIs mean that the stitches are shorter and they have more thread in them. Okay? Now, that's kind of a good thing because they'll hold your garment together better. But they can also lead to seam pucker and weaken fabric. Why is that? Because it makes the stitches heavier. That's why. Okay? Now, what is seam pucker? Well, what it does is it bunches up the fabric so it looks like you have a bunch of ocean waves. And that's one of the problems with a higher SPI. But better a higher SPI than a lower SPI. You say, well, why is that? Okay. Now, lower SPI means that the stitches are longer and they're less durable and they use less thread, which means that they are more susceptible to just falling apart. Okay? And they can also lead to something called gapping, or something that's also called grin through. Gapping and grin through are pretty much the same term. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you have some kind of embroidery that is put on the front of your shirt, okay, now we can have a problem. All right. What it does is it allows the fabric underneath the embroidery to show up through the embroidery. In other words, you're not really seeing the embroidery as much as the shirt underneath. Well, that can lead to a design problem really quick. See what I mean? All right. Now, the last thing I'm going to cover here is stitch width. The distance between the outermost edges of a stitch is called the stitch width. And it is often also called the gauge. So, the longer the stitch width, okay, the more susceptible it is to falling apart. See what I mean? So, when you're talking about YouTube beauty channels and what they are not covering, well, there you go. Do you want a cheap piece of garment that falls apart rather easily, or do you want something that's going to be durable and last you a good long time? You have to think about that when you're buying garments. And this is especially true of women. Women just don't go too well for wardrobe malfunctions. Now, men, that can be a problem for men too, but women, it's a bigger problem. I think you can catch my meaning on that. Alright, so now I've covered the topic. Let's see how well everybody responds to it. Alright, I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned.